Hello students, this is chapter 3.4, the fourth part of the chapter. Now here in this presentation, I will cover the endocrine system, which includes pituitary gland, thyroid gland, adrenal gland, pancreas, gonads, and we will see effects of endocrine system. Here I will talk about the endocrine glands. There are certain chemical substances which are being secreted from the endocrine glands, and these are known as hormones. You all have heard about hormones, yes? But these hormones influence the functions of the body and the course of its development and in the growth of personality. So basically these hormones influence various functions in the body as well as the course of development and growth of personality are also being influenced by hormones. These endocrine glands, they also control and regulate the individual's behavior. For example, when there is extra supply of sugar in the bloodstream, certain ductless glands, or we can also say as endocrine glands, they secrete insulin, which reduces the sugar level in the blood to normal state. These endocrine glands are also known as ductless glands because they don't have any duct, unlike other glands. That means they do not have any pipe-like structure or thread or any way through which these hormones are being secreted. So they are being secreted in the bloodstream. Okay. Endocrine glands also play a major role in coordinating the body activities. For instance, in sudden fear or danger, secretion from the endocrine system is mixed with blood, which brings widely diverse activities to help us face these situations. The different endocrine glands work intimately to maintain equilibrium. That means it maintains a kind of balance and coordinate the body functions. For instance, if one gland is secreting more than optimum, which is not normal, or it is secreting more than normal, so the other gland may secrete a hormone to reduce the excess hormone and maintain the equilibrium and to maintain the balance, that means. Now let us go through the endocrine glands one by one. The first one is the pituitary gland. Now this pituitary gland, if you look in the screen in the diagram, you will see a small structure in the brain part, and that small structure is actually the pituitary gland, which is situated within the cranium just below the hypothalamus. Now this pituitary gland is further divided into anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary, where the anterior pituitary is directly connected with hypothalamus, which regulates uh, its hormonal secretions. Okay, so the anterior pituitary gland, it is a part of the pituitary at the base of the brain, and it produces hormones for the regulation of physiological functions such as growth and reproduction. All right, and the posterior pituitary gland is also an endocrine gland, which is the back portion of the pituitary basically, of course, and it releases oxytocin and vasopressin. Now this oxytocin and vasopressin, those are not that much important, but for your information, oxytocin is a hormone which stimulates the powerful contractions of the muscles of the uterus during labor. Okay, and in women who are breastfeeding, this oxytocin also stimulates the contraction of cells around the milk ducts, causing milk to be released. And the vasopressin, this is the hormone that acts on the kidneys, regulating the amount of water excreted in the urine. Alright, now this pituitary gland, it looks small, but this gland secretes the growth hormone and many other hormones which direct and regulate the secretions of many other endocrine glands which are found in the body. And this is the reason why the pituitary gland is known as the master gland. Don't go for the size, but look at its work, it plays a very major role. Now, some hormones are secreted at a very steady rate throughout life, while others are secreted at an appropriate time in life. Since this is also regulating the growth hormone, so if we take an example and look at it, the growth hormone is released steadily through childhood, yes, with some spurt during adolescence, but gonadotropic hormones are secreted at the age of puberty, which stimulates the secretion of appropriate sex hormones among boys and girls. As a result, primary and secondary sexual changes take place. So we can say that certain glands, certain hormones are being secreted at certain ages only, not throughout, but there are certain hormones which secrete throughout the lifetime. Next, we have the thyroid gland, and if you look in the diagram in the screen, you will see that you have the neck part, and as such the thyroid gland is located in the neck, and it releases a hormone. It produces actually this hormone which is known as thyroxine, and this influences the body's metabolic rate. Now the optimum amount of thyroxine is secreted and regulated by an anterior pituitary hormone, the thyroid stimulating hormone, which is also known as TSH. Okay, so the TSH is responsible for the growth of the muscles in the body. Sometimes you will see that some persons are overweight or underweight. This is because of this thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay, now the steady secretion of this hormone maintains the production of energy, consumption of oxygen, and elimination of wastes in body cells. Okay, so one may be very lazy or one may be very active. That all depends upon the secretion of this hormone. On the other hand, you will also see that underproduction of thyroxine, this leads to physical and psychological lethargy. If thyroid gland is removed in young animals, their growth is stunted and they fail to develop sexually. Whereas in humans, we can see that many times we see that people are very active or people are physically very lethargic, as well as psychologically also they find themselves to be very fatigued. And we also find some people very fat and some people very thin. Not for all, but for some, this thyroxine plays a role over there. Okay. Next, we have adrenal gland. Now, the adrenal gland is located above each kidney, and it has two parts. One is adrenal cortex, and another is the adrenal medulla. And these two secretes different hormones. The secretion of adrenal cortex is controlled and regulated by adrenocorticotropic hormone, which is also known as ACTH, and it is being secreted by anterior pituitary gland. As we already know that pituitary gland is the master gland, so even in the adrenal gland we find the ACTH being secreted by anterior pituitary gland, and when the secretion of adrenal cortex goes down, the anterior pituitary gets the message and it increases the secretion of ACTH, which stimulates the adrenal cortex to secrete more hormones. Okay, the adrenal cortex, it secretes a group of hormones which are called as corticoids, and which are utilized by the body for a number of physiological purposes. For instance, regulation of minerals in the body, and particularly the sodium, potassium, and chlorides. Any disturbance in its function seriously affects the functions of the nervous system, of course, and even in the kidney it has an effect where basically if it doesn't work properly, if it doesn't releases the minerals or it doesn't regulate the minerals in the body, for example this sodium, potassium, and chlorides, then the kidneys are being affected seriously, and the doctors might also suggest for dialysis if someone has any problem in the regulation of this minerals in the kidney. Okay, Next, we have adrenal medulla, which secretes again two hormones, namely epinephrine and norepinephrine. And this epinephrine and norepinephrine is also known as adrenaline and noradrenaline. Now here we can see that sympathetic activation, for instance increased heart rate, oxygen consumption, metabolic rate, muscle tone, etc. This take place through the secretion of these two hormones. And one major thing that lies over here is that epinephrine and norepinephrine, they stimulate the hypothalamus, which prolongs emotions in an individual even when the stressor has been removed. That means even if the stimulus or the incident or any event is being removed, but still it has the effect of the emotions in an individual, and it is the work of the epinephrine and norepinephrine that actually stimulates the hypothalamus, which is again responsible in the emotional part of an individual. Next, we have pancreas. Now, pancreas is such a part where we can also say that it is both duct and ductless. The pancreas is located near the stomach and it has a primary role in digestion of food, but it also secretes a hormone which is known as insulin. And as you know what insulin does and why it is useful, for those who don't know, insulin has the lever to break down glucose for use by the body or for storage as glycogen by the liver. Now, this insulin is very useful and it helps protect a person. And when this insulin is not secreted in proper amount, people develop a disease which is called as diabetic mellitus or simply diabetes. You all have heard about it, isn't it? So that one, if a person's insulin is not being secreted with the through the pancreas, what happens is that people take insulin from outside, and there if the insulin is secreted, either it is secreted less, then also it is affecting. If it is secreting more, then also it has a effect on the individual. Okay, and if it is secreted more, then also it has an effect on the uh, blood pressure level as well. It has an effect on that too. Next we have gonads. Gonads refer to testes in males and ovaries in females. The hormones secreted by these glands control and regulate the sexual behaviors and reproductive functions of both males and females. Now here the secretion of hormones of these glands is initiated, maintained and regulated by a hormone called gonadotropic hormone. In short, it is known as GTH, which is secreted by the anterior pituitary gland again. And the secretion of GTH starts at the age of puberty, that is 10 to 14 years. And it stimulates gonads to secrete hormones, which in turn stimulates development of primary and secondary sexual characteristics. The ovaries in females, they produce estrogens and progesterone. Again, these are hormones and nothing else. Estrogens guide the sexual development of the body, and are primary sexual characteristics related with reproduction, such as development of ovum or egg cell, appear on every 28 days or so in the ovary of a sexually mature female. That is why there is this 28 cycle, menstrual cycle in females, which helps in the body wastes of the females to just flush out. And then there is the secondary sexual characteristics, which are responsible in certain widened pelvis, for example, or rounded body contours that depend on this hormone. Okay, now progesterone has no role in sexual development. Its function is related with preparation of uterus for the possible reception of fertilized ovum. Now, if we move to the males, the hormonal system for reproductive behavior is much simpler in them because there is no cyclic pattern. And testes in males produce sperm continuously and secrete male sex hormones which are called androgens. Now, the major androgen is testosterone. Now, testosterone prompts secondary sexual changes such as physical changes, growth of facial and body hairs, deepening of voice, and increase in sexual oriented behavior. The increased aggression and other behaviors are also linked with testosterone production in the males. Alright, now let's look at the effects of endocrine system. The normal functioning of all hormones is very crucial to our behavioral well-being. Without a balanced secretion of hormones, the body would be unable to maintain the state of internal equilibrium. And without the increased secretion of some specific hormones during the times of stress, we would not be able to react effectively to the potential dangers in our environment. As well, we can say that without the secretion of hormones at specific times in our lives, we would not be able to grow, mature, and reproduce. That is why many times when the females go for their gynecological checkup, many times they are being asked to go for certain blood tests and also some hormonal checks, just to check that whether the hormones are working properly or not, because it does plays a crucial role in the maintenance of balance, the internal balance of the body.